everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of It's Our House podcast with me, Carl Faz-Fadl, and Mr. Christopher Dees, my co-host. How are you, buddy?
Really good, mate. It's a beautiful day. Bank holiday weekend, had a cracking weekend. Really looking forward to this. Been excited to speak to today's guest for a long time.
Yeah, it's our first summer, so we're very happy about that.
Yes, yeah.
But today, we've got a multi-time champion. He's been in Impact Wrestling, Global Force Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, and he is currently the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. It is Mr. Nick Aldis. Welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I appreciate it.
No, we do. We really appreciate you spending your time. Thank you so much. As you know, we'll just get straight into the questions. We want to hear all about yourself. So, you started out wrestling in 2004 when you were 18, I believe. Then only 5 years later, you were wrestling for TNA. What was it like adapting to living and wrestling in America after being raised in a seaside town like Dukin? Was it a big culture shock for you, and how did you settle?
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously, there's you're talking about a major sort of culture shocks in a lot of ways, but I was ready for them. I was looking forward to them because one of the great things about the way that TNA sort of took care of me in the beginning was that I started in TNA. I think I started in January of 2009, but I signed in I signed in 2008 sometime. Wow. I signed before, it was before we even did the second season of Gladiators. I had already signed with TNA, but so for that first year, because I had quite a few bookings and commitments and stuff based off of Gladiators, pretty much that first, almost that entire first year, 2009, I just was flying in and out, which was brutal. I mean,
it was
exhausting. I mean, like I would have times that I was dating a girl at the time, and I remember once I came back after we had done like TV tapings in Orlando. So to put it in context, sometimes I would fly out of London, but sometimes Bob Ryder would find me a flight out of Norwich. So you would fly Norwich to Amsterdam, and then Amsterdam to like Atlanta or whatever hub you like, whatever Delta hub, and then that hub to Orlando.
Oh my word!
And this was one of those. So my then girlfriend had picked me up after I'd done. So I'd started on that was my flight out, and then I'd gone from there. We had done house shows somewhere like Kentucky or something like that. Then we had gone to California. It was Bound for Glory. They did in like Irvine, California or something like that. And then from there, I'm pretty sure we went to Europe, but we didn't do the UK. It was like they did a tour. They did Germany and Dublin.
Yeah.
And I had done that, and then gone back to Orlando, and then back to the UK after those tapings. And by the time I never forget this, like she had panicked for a second because she thought I had died because so I come back and I was like sitting on her couch or something, and she was like, I'll make you a cup of tea. And I was like, and then by the time she came back, I'd fallen asleep, but my eyes were open. So she was like, what? She's like, well, are you okay? And I'm like, wait, what's the matter? Yeah, I just fell asleep. She's like, your eyes were wide open. So it was around that time that I then started kind of having the conversation with the office. Like, look, I've fulfilled most of my commitments now to Sky. Like I know this is killing me. Like, can we work out a new contract so I can move? Like, and, it was pretty easily done after that. But so yeah, my first time coming to the States was to go to Harley Race's camp in 2007. And like, you want to talk about a culture shock, like going not only going to the US for the first time, but going to Eldon, Missouri. That was a culture shock. And so, I mean, I was sort of ready for it by then. And like I said, because I'd been coming back and forth, it was like, I got to do it nice and gradually. I would get, a few days in Orlando, then go back, and then I'd get a few days in Orlando, and then whatever house show, which most of TNA house shows at that point were in the sort of Southeast.
Yeah.
So it was kind of, and I think that's one of the reasons why I ended up really liking the South, because I live in Tennessee now. Just because I just, it's a different pace. It's a bit, probably it's more similar to Norfolk, and you know, that sort of, it's close. You know, you've still got sort of creature comforts and all that, but it's not sort of crazy busy, and it's not and the people are sort of friendly and welcoming, and yeah, it's you know, even if they're a bit kooky sometimes, but it's like, you know, so I think, and I grew up sort of, I always wanted to come to America. I was one of those people. I was one of those kids that had, I knew that one way or another, I was going to end up in the States. I mean, even I remember my teachers and my parents even saying that to me long before I sort of had my sights set on wrestling. Like, they would say, "Oh, you're going to end up in America. You know, you've got that sort of American kind of outlook. This kind of, you know, because, you know, Brits are a bit more reserved and sort of inward, and in Britain, you've got to be really careful with how you display your ambition.
Yes, you do.
Like, you can't sort of just declare, like, I'm going to be the best in the world. Yeah, and everyone, all right, calm down, mate. You know, it's much more cynical. You know, it's just sort of like, oh, get a load of this guy. Always, you know? Like, and I just could never. I was just like, well, shit, you got to shoot for the moon. You know what I mean? And
exactly.
And so I think with that, in that regard, I think that was where they started recognizing, like, you're heading for America. And I think I always knew I was. So it wasn't, I was sort of, I love elements of both countries, you know, like I sort of, I'm obviously very proud of my British heritage, and I miss it terribly. I mean, especially at the moment, because this is the longest I've been without being able to come back for a visit. I mean, I usually come back about 3 or 4 times a year, and you know, this is without question. I mean, even going back to the early days when I was not, I mean, I wasn't making a lot of money. I was sort of, you know, even then I still would make it back at least twice a year. But this is, I'm ready to come back now for sure.
Yeah, it's awful, isn't it? We've only just been allowed to go back into restaurants.
Says
everything at the moment.
Not Tennessee.
No, you're out and about living the dream.
What was it like working with Harley Race? Did you spend much time with him? I've heard some things. I think we've had people on before that have worked with Harley, and you know, they've said that he was tough but incredible to work with.
I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, by the time, like, I don't want to sort of give this impression that I, you know, was super close with him, and, you know, that he was a sort of mentor or anything like that. But that he, you know, he was, from the minute that we got to Eldon, I think for him, I think it meant a lot to him that because I remember they called us, you know, when we were applying for the camp, because they did want to try to maintain quite a high standard. You know, there wasn't a cash grab. Like, they had, you know, they did want to sort of, you had to sort of answer quite a few questions and stuff. And I think he was impressed that, number one, I was a full-time wrestler.
Yeah.
Like, because I was working for Dixon, so I was doing I was doing Butlins and, you know, and sort of working and other independents in between. So that was my only job. You know, wrestling was my, I was, you know, I mean, Brian was like, people to this day, I don't think really understand sort of what an impressive business he built, you know, for such a long time. Because, gosh, my first year where I went full time, I mean, like, he must have had 300 shows.
Wow.
You know, and it was like, there were like 2 or 3 different teams. Like, I remember, like, Sheamus and Drew were usually on the other team.
Yeah.
Like, and so I would sort of, it was kind of like, you would hear those old stories of the, you know, on a different scale, obviously, but like the old WWF stories where you had like the one team in here and one team here. So you had like, and it was like that. They sort of went, okay, we'll have like Brookside on top and on this team, you know, and then you'll have like these sort of, you know, Sheamus and Drew and, you know, Gangrel, let's say, or whatever, on this team. And then like on our team, it would be, you know, PCO and, you know, sort of whoever the sort of top British guy was, Frankie Sloan or James Mason or whatever, you know, they were on this team. And it was just like, and so then every now and then they'd have the sort of bigger shows, like Hanley or something like that, or Blackpool, or was it something that was, you know, was going to be a big house, and everyone would, you know, and it would sort of be, then that would be where you'd sort of converge on each other, and they'd sort of do a big card with like everyone on. So it's like I would cross paths with, you know, Sheamus and Drew and that, but sometimes it would just be like I'd see him like once every 2 or 3 weeks, you know, on a certain show, like, oh hey, oh Doug, you know, Doug would be like, Doug would have his own bookings, but then like he'd jump on like on the south, you know, around Kent and stuff like that. It was really sort of like a territory, you know, and I think Harley understood that. So I think already he sort of had this appreciation for the fact that I was like, I sort of put all my eggs in one basket, you know, I sort of was, you know,
respected the grind.
Myself. Yeah. And I went straight, you know, I was like, because I remember it was, you know, I was just a weekend warrior. I had a, you know, 9 to 5. I was like selling insurance. I hated it, but because I just wanted to, you know, fund my wrestling dream. But I got, you know, Doug got me booked for John Fremantle, and, you know, held my hand through a match. And then Doug pretty much said to me, you should go work for Brian. You could go full time. You know, you just need to wrestle a lot now. And I called Brian, and like Brian just kind of took one look at me and went, yeah, sure, you know, you can start next week. And that was it. So, you know, I quit my job and now I was a wrestler. And it, you know, so, and I think like the fact that we'd, you know, scraped together the money and flown out to Eldon, Missouri to go do it. Right away, he sort of, you know, he took me to his office and he showed me all this cool stuff, you know, like he, you know, showed me stuff from Japan and, you know, stuff with him and Andre, or he like showed me like, oh, look at this check I got for like 28 grand, you know, from in like 1978 or something. Like, oh shit, you know, and so I think I was, you know, obviously it's Harley Race, so it's, you know, you're nervous. I was nervous that he was going to be. But, you know, at the same time, by then I'd encountered enough sort of grizzly, you know, crusty old shooter types in England. So I was sort of like, whatever. But God, he couldn't have been a more sort of genuine mentor. Like he really wanted the boys there to succeed. Like Joe Hennig was in that class with me. Sam Shaw, who's on Dexter Loomis. Mm-hmm. You know, I made like lifelong friends from that camp, and you know, Harley would sit there, and they, you know, they worked you hard. It was a hard camp for sure, but I wanted that. Like, I think that's where between, you know, those guys I just mentioned and a few others, it was like Harley would kind of, you know, he could just recognize that, so he'd just like pull you aside and be like, you know, you're looking good, kid. You know, go work with this one over here. You guys are, you know, he's like, don't waste time. You know, he would do little things like that, like, go pair off with him, like you guys are going to be good, so you should go work with each other, you know, that kind of stuff. And he you know, it meant a lot to me. And obviously then later on, for him to sort of acknowledge, you know, me as a champion and sort of and kind of give me a little bit of a rub, like, you know, it meant a lot, because you know, that's a credibility thing that you can't
100%
you can't buy, you know. So
I was devastated when he sadly passed away a couple of years ago now, wasn't it? That's absolutely flown by.
I mean, he was not well for a long time, but it was sad. I was glad I got to see him and work a show for him, you know,
before.
I think I did a little interview with him for the NWA YouTube channel, and I believe that was the last interview he ever did.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So a sort of dubious honor, but like certainly, you know.
Legend.
I'll have to check that out. Right. So something that I've been really keen to find out about your thoughts basically on long title reigns. We don't get them very often anymore. We see titles hot shotted around so often, especially in WWE, AEW, etc. You've been NWA World Heavyweight Champion for quite a long time now. Obviously, that's been impacted by COVID and restrictions and lockdowns and things like that. But what does it personally mean to you to hold such a prestigious title for such a long time? Because NWA, as much as people talk up the WWE title, the NWA title is the most prestigious of all time. I think we can all relate to that.
Definitely.
But as I said, we don't really see those long title reigns very often. So do you ever worry that your long title reign might become stale, or would you rather drop the belt at some point? And you know,
I think it's all a balancing act, isn't it? It's like look, there's always there's stuff like this. It's subjective, right? There's always going to be someone who says it's been too long, and then there's going to be someone who says, I like the fact that it's been this long, and and then there's going to be people say, well, what about the women's belt's been defended in AEW? Yeah, okay, but like that's up to them.
Yeah,
like we did, like it's they've got plenty of their own men's titles that they need to be featured. They've only got one women's title, and the NWA one then, obviously has sort of gained a lot of exposure as a result because there's a space for it. But it's like, come on, man, like it's it is what it is. I just obviously, and I say this knowing that there'll be people who will sort of groan when I say it, but I'm business. Like it means a lot to be the champion, right? And I like being the champion, and I'm fucking good at being the champion.
Damn right.
But but it doesn't. But it doesn't mean to say that I also know like when it's time.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I know that. Like, but it's. And again, this will be another thing that will elicit groans from people who are just desperate to fucking hate on me. But it's like you've got to do, especially after when it's been a long time, you've got to do it right.
Yep.
Like there's nothing worse than if it was such a long time and then it was a whack sort of
squash match.
Yeah, like or just a switch that didn't have a setting and a moment and a match that wasn't befitting of a switch. Like, come on, man, that's the wrestling business. Look at All In.
Yep.
Like, it wasn't like we sort of had it in the plan for this whole time. Like, yep, and then by about September next year, it'll be about the right time. Fucking the show presented itself, and we went, that's the one. That's the one to do business. Like, it's subjective. There's so many factors that go into it. It's such a fluid thing. But yeah, like trust me, I'm not desperate to be the world champion for the rest of my career and retire with the belt. Like that's not something that's been my I've never. I remember seeing, and I hate to say this because I don't know the guy, and I'm sure he's a nice guy, but like I remember I did this show years ago in England when I was just a complete like rookie. I think I was Battle Royal or something, and Brian Maxine was on the show, right? Old sort of World of Sport legend, and he came out with a belt. Like it was whatever world mid heavyweight, I don't know what it was, like something. And he's undefeated. Like never lost the belt, and I'm kind of like, what? He's like, this guy's in his 60s. Like what good does this do for it? You know what I mean? So like, trust me, like I'm not. It's not like I'm sitting there going, nope, only me. I'm the only one who can be the champion. Nobody else. And also, by the way, it's not up to me.
Yes, I think people forget that, don't they?
It is. I've earned the right to, have my influence on how it's done and what to do. Obviously it's my it's business, right? It's in my best interest, but at the end of the day it's not like I'm sitting here calling the shots. Like
I think that's what people forget though, isn't it?
I probably don't get me wrong, I'm privileged to get probably more of a say than most, but it's not like I've earned that.
Right.
It's not like it's not like we've ever sat there and went. I don't think we ever had a discussion about the All In finish.
No.
Like no, there was never this thing where it was sat down and it was like, okay, this is what we're like. It was just we all knew like, oh, that's the one. Like, let's go. Let's let's make some money. Like
It's the difference, though, isn't it, between like someone who, as you said, quite rightly knows the business, knows what the business needs, and someone who's just out for themselves. And the ones who know the business and know what they need, I think you go longer.
Wrestling is kind of devolved into this sort of subculture of like the actual show is the stuff that's not being seen. Yeah, like all the fans are talking about is like what's happening behind the scenes, and they don't actually know. It's all kind of, and it's, trust me, there's as much fiction going on in that as there is because this stuff that it's all leaked by like wrestlers or wrestling people who want to sort of skew the narrative in a certain direction.
Yeah.
So it's like there's, you know, I read this, you know, and because it's become such a sort of juicy, like they basically, you know, you have to remember this, that one of the factors in wrestling's explosion in terms of revenue and profitability in the late 90s was the fact that they decided to then go, oh, well, I'm going to write a book and tell everybody exactly how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm going to do this documentary where I, like, you know, okay, you guys all know it's a work, but now let me tell you A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you know, like that. Yeah. Now let me take you through the exact magic trick.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like those guys all doubled their money, like, and kind of scorched the earth for the rest of us. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so it's like, that you got to play that game now. Like, that's part of the, you know, so trust me, if I, you know, fuck with the smart fans and stuff like that, you know, it's only because it's like, that's sort of necessary now to keep them on their toes, so that, because ultimately the thing you need to draw pay-per-view buys or to draw tickets to a title match is the uncertainty.
Yeah.
And so if you follow the sort of formulaic stuff, then people's like, we already know that it's going to be, you know, this one's he's going to win, you know, All In. There was enough sort of gray areas where they sort of went, yeah, but Cody's not under contract to them, and, you know, but would Billy allow it, you know, and all this, like, there was all these things, you know, and they're all sitting there, you know, I would read these incredible hypotheses that these like experts would pontificate on, you know, oh, you know, I think what's probably happened is they've had some sort of summit and they've agreed that, you know, to take on Vince, they all need to get, you know, I'm like, what are you on, you know? Okay. We just looked at it and went, that's a good opportunity for everyone. That's a good platform.
Simple.
Hey man, that's gonna do a big house. That's great for us, great for the title, great for Cody. Like, oh, no brainer. Good piece of business. Like, you know.
So you all went in your like volcano.
I just read it, you know, I see this stuff now with this, and I'm like, oh, this is a gatekeeper. He's like doing this and he's doing that. And I'm like, how do you know? You sitting like acting like I'm fucking, I'm a Skeletor, like plotting, you know, yeah, like, wait till they see how I ruin business for everyone. Like, you know, we just sit there and go, all right, right, what we got coming up? All right, we're going to do this show. Okay, I think, you know, let's start thinking about what's the best direction to go in. That's it.
Yep,
like,
that's all it takes.
Who can I work with? Like, who can I work with?
Yeah, I think that's everyone wants to do, isn't it? At the moment, that is the choice, as you said. The magicians don't show you the trick and then tell you what went into the trick.
I know, and it bothers me that they draw it out of you, because what they do is they spread fake ones instead that then make you look like a complete dick. So then you feel the need to go, no, that's not what's happening. You know, here's what's happening. And that's really all it's about, because they're just desperate to be in the know. You know what I mean? They're just desperate to be like in the know about everything and to be able to brag like, I know what's happening. Like, all right.
I'm sure you do.
You crack on then.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. We'll go back to NWA for a bit. Obviously during COVID, NWA didn't really have that kind of fallback that a lot of the huge companies had. And there was a short time there where we thought that it wasn't coming back. Period. Did Billy Corgan keep you in the loop in the whole time, and what was the relation like in terms of it coming back and when you found out?
It was dicey for a minute there. Yeah, not gonna lie. Billy, I think, but here's the reality. Look, Billy mentioned this the other day, that he estimates that he may have generated $1 billion in revenue over his music career.
Wow. Right.
We were. I forget how it came up in conversation, but he was, and he started kind of thinking about it. He goes, it might be $1 billion. I only say that to illustrate the point that when with COVID first, kind of, it was a very, very frustrating situation, because we had so much momentum.
Yeah.
And it obviously just completely derailed it. And so Billy had already been in a situation where he'd spent quite a lot of money and was right at that point where he thought, okay, now we might be able to start, getting some of that back. And, and then of course it's like, then you're suddenly faced with, it would be like climbing a mountain where you think you've got to the top and then you actually go through the clouds and you realize there's like a whole other, you know what I mean? It's
yeah.
like, and it's like, so he's now sort of faced with this reality of, okay, now I'm going to have to bleed money again for another year and a half, 2 years. He doesn't even know how long because nobody knew.
Yeah.
And then the speaking out stuff happened and that was a fucking nightmare, so it's like he's and he rightly, first and foremost, he paid me my salary the whole time.
Brilliant.
Right. So so I was loyal. I just sat there and was okay, that's that says a lot for you to do that.
Definitely.
Yeah. But
there were times where I said to him, look, I'm not going to judge you for whatever decision you make, but you do need to make one. Like I said, because it's because at some point it's the value's just going to the value's going to deteriorate, because you can't lose your trust. You can't lose the trust of the audience. That's the number one thing for any promotion, any booker, any brand. Once you lose the trust, it's really hard to get it back. And the one thing with wrestling fans is that the one thing they want to be able to trust is that you're not going anywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah, of course.
So it's like he held his hand to the flame about as long as he could. It was like he got off the train tracks just in time. But I think what we just about sort of saved it by the skin of the teeth in terms of that. But there's still a lot to do. But the fight deal came along, and that sort of was
huge. That wasn't it? Huge.
It was in the sense that now there's a rights fee.
Yeah.
So it's like that was kind of, it was like, it was a major step forward for a startup company.
Yeah.
So there were many conversations with Billy where he sort of he had to explain to me that he was terrified that if there was another scandal, there was some sort of other major problem, because he'd already been through the Cornette thing and now this Lagana thing. It was like, it was rough.
Yeah.
And he was worried that anymore, and it might start really affecting the rest of his enterprise, and I respected that, because look, I have my own company outside of wrestling.
Yeah.
And you do have to think about that stuff, because you go, it's you're obviously it not, I mean, I'm pretty good about, I actually read my sort of Twitter mentions like about once a week. Like the rest of the time I just sort of I'll just read the actual timeline and stuff like that. I'll browse it, or if I have something to tweet to promote something, I'll do it. But because I just because again, going back to what I said before, it's like I don't care about trolls, but the ones who try to sort of really write some informed thing, like they're like they're like they're sort of declaring what's happening, like they know, like that gets to me. I'm not gonna lie, but I'm also sitting there going, wait, like your other business, you've got clients now that are like major companies and major corporations, that you don't act like this. Come on, exactly. And it's like because that is the only thing with wrestling, is it can be absurdly childish for such a
yes.
for such a huge industry that generates such a huge amount of revenue. God, it can be really, really childish and dumb sometimes.
Massively.
Absolutely.
And social media is like the number one catalyst for that. So it's like
wrestling Twitter is the worst thing on the planet.
Oh, Twitter, wrestling Twitter is like
it's
like it's
it's so bad.
It's like going into a haunted house or something. You just know, like you're going to see some shit that you absolutely hate, and it's going to make you just want to put your hand through a wall. And then you do it anyway, and you go, these fucking people. Like, anyway.
I think it was what they trying to say. Oh, the NWA AEW relationship only extends to Rosa and to Deeb. I think you had to call somebody out.
That's true. It is, but the thing that it pretty much is. But it's not like it's, you know, again, all that stuff is done pretty casually. It's not like, it's, you know, they, you know,
it's a phone call, isn't it? And a conversation.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Not like,
it's a phone call. They, you know, hey, we're thinking about doing this. Is that cool? Yeah. Okay. Well, if you do that, can we do this? Yeah. Okay. You know,
done.
we did the same thing with Ring of Honor. Like Ring of Honor would call Billy and say, hey, can we have Nick for this big show? And he'd be like, yeah. And I say, well, who do you want? I was like, I want, you know, PCO, or, you know, give us Flip for the, you know, give us Flip for a show or whatever. And it's like, you know, it's not that hard.
It's not. It's not.
And it's not that interesting. But again, these guys want to make it more interesting. And, you know, some of them make a living out of pretending that they're, you know, they're basically in the room. So it's whatever.
Yep. There's a few very notable names that I think do that basically all day, every day, don't they? Mr. Dave. Right. So with
Dave's all right. You know, like I will say about Dave, he is. I don't believe that he genuinely tries to sort of put out false stuff.
Yeah.
I just think that a lot of people feed him
the wrong stuff.
Yeah, and I think sometimes he trusts he trusts the wrong people sometimes, and just gonna, you know, just go. But it's part of the business, and it's not going away. So
no, it's not.
No, absolutely. Right, I want to sort of go back to something you said before. Like, obviously, you had your big match with Cody. Nobody really knew what was going to go on there. At the minute, Kenny Omega is obviously on an expedition of gold, but it's similar to what the Hardys did a few years ago. There's been talk about him maybe hooking up with you and maybe going for the NWA World Heavyweight title as well. Would you be interested in facing Kenny? I mean, that's just on the surface of it. That's a huge match already. But also, what as a former TNA guy, obviously now Impact, do you think that Impact are benefiting in any way from this partnership? Me and Faz have both had a lot to say about the partnership. It sometimes seems like Impact are being maybe forgotten about and left behind a little bit. What do you make of what's going on?
Truthfully, I haven't seen enough of it to really weigh in. So I'll just leave it there. I've been asked this question a lot, and the response is always the same. If it made sense, if the right business was done, yeah. Like, because it's business.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know Kenny. I obviously appreciate that he's a, you know, world-class talent. Like, and he has a huge following, and they're very dedicated to him. Let's just say that. Like, to the point where Omega fans will say stuff to me that I'll sort of think, well, wait a minute, what do I do?
Yeah. Like, yes, you can't diss an Omega fan. You just can't. But
I'm not dissing them.
You can't even be in the conversation of it.
Right, and right away it's like, oh, you're the enemy. Okay, so I will say that kind of puts me off the whole thing.
Yeah,
because I'm like, when did this become like? You had to all, you know, when did we? I thought this whole thing was supposed to be, oh, wrestling fans are all working together. Oh, isn't it so great? Like, oh my God, like wrestling's the best. Like, you know, everyone's out, you know. But then suddenly it's like, okay, because I'm a world champion, I have a different world title belt. Like, suddenly I'm a piece of shit, and you want me to die? Like,
nice.
I had it for 3 years almost. You know, you didn't seem to care when I was working with Cody.
Yeah, anyway. Exactly.
Yeah. It's just giving people more enemies, hasn't it? More
promotions. Yeah, and it's unfortunate, and it just, you know, that kind of shit. After a while, it just drains my energy, and that's when I end up just sort of ignoring it all, because I'm just kind of like, what does this do for anyone? This doesn't help anyone.
Exactly.
And like, I get frustrated sometimes with this idea that they put out they sort of frame this sort of stuff as if I don't like those guys. Like, I had such a good time working in doing the stuff with Ring of Honor during that time, all around the sort of all in all that time, being, you know, it was so cool to see the Bucks kind of really like stepping out into the spotlight, and kind of, you know, they'd created this empire for themselves. And, you know, Kenny I'd never met, but it was like his reputation preceded him, so it was cool to sort of cross paths with him. And obviously Marty was like red hot, and then there's Cody, and it's like, he's a very interesting guy. You know, he's this very unique sort of character. And it was, you know, and I just had a good time because I was just like, I enjoyed being amongst all that energy.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it was like being, you know, playing a big part in the sort of leveling up of Flip, you know, like, and helping that, you know, and seeing what he's turned into, and you know what I mean, and just like, I had a great time, and I'm, you know, so happy for those guys. I've always liked Nick and Matt.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we used to be the jabronis in the, you know, in the trailer at TNA, like not booked for anything. Like, I've always liked those guys, you know, and it's like somehow they just, and I look, I haven't spoken to them in a while, but it's like, it breaks my heart sometimes to think that their fans and stuff have got so kind of carried away with this, you know, with this kind of thing, that they started trying to sort of turn people into sort of enemies. And
exactly, yeah.
It's like, I just hope that they don't see it like that, because I'm just like, I just really enjoy my quality of life doing this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I like being able to sort of have the level of control that I have, and I like being able to try stuff, and I like being involved with a company at this level. Like, and you know, having the amount of responsibility I have, they should totally understand that, because that's why they went and did what they do.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like, you know, that's as far as it goes. There's no resentment or jealousy or anything like that. I won't say who it was, but I was texting with a buddy of mine who's in AEW the other day, and we were literally like laughing about it all, going like, all I know is that we both still somehow are getting paid good money to be pro wrestlers, and we have a nice house, and like, you know, families. And, like, I'm sitting there looking at I'm sitting out, like, you know, looking at my pool and going, this is not bad for like, not bad for just sort of, you know, when I used to wrestle at Butlin.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Like, you know, it's you know, it's so, like, you know, I just always try to remind myself of that.
Yeah.
That's why I really admire FTR, because they have that same kind of outlook. Like, hey man, you know, like, look at, you know, I take, like, you know, Gallows. I've known Gallows for years. Like, you know, and I, you know, I sort of inadvertently helped like, you know, Gallows in TNA when he came in 2013. You know, sort of, and like, again, just, you know, he sort of had a whole, you know, second wave of success and career and stuff like that, and it's like, I was happy for those guys. They're crushing it, you know, like, and I don't know, just, you know, people ask you these questions, and it's just that they just frame it in such a way that's like, the negativity is there before you even answer.
Of course.
So then immediately it's like, the headline can say, you know, Nick Aldis comments on so-and-so, right away they just assume that it's in a negative way.
Yeah.
And so then half people don't even read it. So right away they're like, oh, fuck Nick Aldis, man, he sucks, you know. I just go, I'm not like,
yeah, fuck this shit. That's what you want to say.
I'm putting my phone down and going outside.
Okay, we obviously know, you know, NWA now is on its way to, you know, hopefully more and more success. It's really gaining momentum. But I want to revert back to yourself. You tweeted out a few days ago that you were fired up by Austin, inspired by The Rock, enamored by Mick Foley, awestruck by The Undertaker, but you believed in Bret Hart. So many wrestlers cite Bret Hart as the greatest, but what was it about him that struck a chord with you, and why do you think so many people think of him as the greatest of all time?
I thought Bret was cool. Like, he wrestled like, he had that sort of aura about him, like a top footballer would.
Yeah.
Where he sort of...
that Ronaldo type swagger.
Yeah, it was... Yeah. He knew how good he was, but he wasn't being arrogant. He wrestled like a hero. He was like a... You know, he was authentic.
Yeah.
Like, nothing gets me more pissed off than when people go, Bret didn't have a lot of personality. Like, that couldn't be more wrong.
Yeah.
Like he had, that was his personality. He chose that persona to be different from everyone else, because everyone else was doing the big bug eyes and, you know, over the top cartoonish kind of movements and selling. And, you know, he was like, I'm going to be realistic. Like my number one thing, you know, his sort of priority from the minute he stepped through the curtain to the minute he went back was, it was real. Like it felt real. Like he didn't want to do anything that didn't feel like, that couldn't, you know, that would take you out of the moment.
Yeah.
And like almost every other wrestler at some point or other did something that you kind of had to give a bit of a pass to, because you knew, because it was, you know, a little bit phony.
Yeah.
And you sort of, everyone's got one. Most wrestlers, I'm sure, you know, I do, everyone does. They've got that one thing that the way they do it, you have to sort of go, well, we'll get through that and we'll carry on. Right? Brett had nothing like that. Everything he did looked like he was doing it with all of his heart and soul, and you know, and it was, you know, and I was certainly, like, obviously at the time I was just a fan, so it wasn't like I could articulate all this, but obviously going back and then studying him, it's like then I could really understand why. But it was like, because even the way he sold and stuff, it, you know, you felt like it was real.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't like, so, you know, if you oversell something, now it's kind of obvious that you're like, you know, it's another thing you see all the time. They were, oh my God, like so and so selling was so good in this. It's like, what?
Yeah, you shouldn't have to say that, should you? It should just be part of the character.
But like, so are you saying that it's better to like oversell? I don't understand. Like, you know, you know, but like with Brett, it was like for me, I don't know, I always just, as a kid, again, so basically with a sort of purest of intentions as a fan, I just always felt like he was the best.
Yeah.
And then when I went, and then, so then as an adult, I sort of went back and watched him and, you know, appreciated his greatness even more from all the subtle details.
Yeah.
And just his commitment, like his level of commitment and passion to that character and to protect the business. Yeah. Like to not, Brett never took the low hanging fruit.
No, he didn't. You can see that.
He never like, and again, and I hate to keep sort of harping on this, but like, I know I sort of make a joke about it, but it is true. Like, there's a lot of wrestlers who came up during kayfabe, and then once they sort of got toward the end of their run and they're making money, they just kind of went, fuck kayfabe. Like, and like, because I've got my money, you know, like I want to make a bit more. Fuck everyone else. Yeah. But like Brett, okay, yeah, he had to do that once Montreal happened. Like, it was kind of like, but you know, he kind of had no choice. Exactly. And you get pushed into that situation, you have to show your cards, don't you? Sure, but he never did anything in the ring that was, you know, that like a little like wink, wink, you know, like it was for him. He just was always 100% committed to the idea of, no, like, I want people to believe. I want little kids to believe. I want people to get lost in the moment, and that truly is really what the business is about. Definitely. Escapism. 100%.
Yeah. I was never a big Brett fan. I was more like, I like the flashiness of Shawn Michaels and the over.
Oh, he's gone. He'll come back.
The topness and just around and having a laugh on the telly. But speaking of Brett, even though I didn't like him, one of my favourite matches was obviously him against British Bulldog. As us all be.
His internet's bad.
In Brits, that was an iconic match. Speaking of UK wrestling, British wrestling.
He's disagreeing with me.
That's right.
Do you?
No, like and again, it's the business is subjective, right? That's another thing that just, it's like, I that's why when I put that tweet out, I was kind of amazed at the response it got. But it was because I'd seen something that was, you know, that someone had written about Brett that I really agreed with, and it resonated with me. And it was just, I had been having that conversation recently with someone, and that's how I had put it. Was I said, you know, the thing with Brett was, you know, I said like and that's why I wrote it like that, because it was like all these huge stars at that point, and I loved them all.
Yeah.
Like I was just a huge mark. Like I loved the business. So, you know, but when it came down to it, like Brett was the one I believed in.
Yeah.
You know, like he was like a hero. Like he was like, you know, he was my hero. And so it's like that's, and I think that sometimes that might be the reason why it's hard for people to sort of put their finger on why he's one of the all-time greats.
Yeah.
Because you can't point to a specific, oh, he was a great promo, or he was because you go to Shawn Michaels' best in-ring performer. You know, or you like The Rock had so much charisma in his promos are off the charts. You know, Stone Cold was so over. You know what I mean. But with Brett, it's kind of like, well, he was just so good at everything.
Yeah.
Like,
he was a master of all, wasn't he?
He was so consistently good at everything. You know, from sort of 95 onwards, and even the promos thing. Yeah, okay. You know, he wasn't cutting memorable promos before, but there was something about the way he did them. They felt like sports interviews.
Yeah.
I think that the thing with Brett was that I think if you like sports, if you were a big sports kid like I was, like that's why you liked Brett, because he talked and acted like a pro athlete, not like a over the top like entertainer.
Yeah.
He acted like a professional athlete.
Yeah.
So it was like Bret Hart. I could watch a Bret Hart match with my dad, and my dad wouldn't groan and go, "Oh God," you know, like like. My dad was a pro rugby player. Do you know what I mean? Like he's if he sees someone do something like over the top and phony and silly, that's what you're going to lose him.
Yeah.
But like Bret Hart and Steve Austin, he'd go poof. You know?
That's what I want to say.
Yeah, well, yeah. Like my dad's a huge Samoa Joe fan. Like he loved it when I teamed with Joe. He's like, well, I like that Samoa Joe. You know. He'd have been a good prop forward, you know. Like, he's like, oh, he's a bloody good athlete for a guy that size, isn't he? Bloody hell, you know. Like he liked that. Like he appreciated, the realism of it, because all of Joe's stuff looks so legit. Like Joe's another guy that never did anything that made you go, ugh.
Exactly.
You know, no groaners.
No. Speaking of which, obviously, we've had Samoa Joe. Obviously, your wife Mickie James, one of the number of recent WWE releases. Did obviously the release come as a shock to the two of you? And what are your thoughts on the releases overall for the business? Well,
it's just part of the game. Like when if you're gonna go to WWE, like you just need to be prepared for the good and the bad.
Yeah.
Right. It's like you kind of jump on the roller coaster and just hold on for dear life. Like it's just sort of like that's the big time. You know what I mean? That's the sort of everyone knows it now. So it shouldn't come as any sort of major shock. I think and certainly I don't want to speak on her behalf, but I think I think for us, the frustration was more from how poorly used she was, not from the, what I mean?
Definitely.
And again, I think most people kind of know who was sort of responsible for that. And it's just like, that's sad.
Yeah.
Just what
so much potential there.
So unnecessary. Like, but nobody wins. Like
exactly.
It's like great. You're not really thinking of the fans.
No.
But at the same time, right away, I got excited about the idea of her being able to be herself again.
Exactly.
And started thinking about like potential matchups that we can now promote in our own way with plenty of time, and make it and give it the stage it deserves.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
Yep.
And she deserves it. She fully deserves it. And obviously, seeing Joe back on the scene is going to be something special for wherever he goes.
Absolutely.
Right. Something that we love seeing are your interactions with NWA interviewer Kyle Davis. They're always good fun. Nice little throwback to some of the classic interviews that we used to see from the likes of Mean Gene. Is that just you two messing around and having fun, or is it a scripted, produced thing? Do you have much creative freedom in that sense?
Oh, yeah, completely. Yeah.
It's literally on my watch later list, by the way. I have like
it wasn't something. Yeah. It wasn't something that came. Like it wasn't something that sort of was by design.
Yeah.
I just, I've always believed that the interviewers, the stickmen, should have a personality.
Yes.
Like I always believed that the stickmen should have their own, need to be their own character on the show. That's why I loved having Sean Mooney.
Yeah.
And I dare say that, you'll see him again. It's like, I'm just like, you can't teach that gravitas.
You can't.
Like such a pro, you know what I mean? Like that, he's got that sort of silky smooth voice and the, and the way he presents it and the way, that might be my all-time favorite promo. The first one I did with Sean Mooney on whatever season that was.
Yeah.
Like, just because for me, it was like, man, that was such a cool moment for me to do an interview with him and to get to because I always wanted to work off of people like that.
Yeah. Brings the best out of both of you, doesn't it?
Yes. I mean, I remember I used to do it with JB, and if JB, trust me, if Borash wasn't such a major player now at NXT, like I would be doing everything I could to be like, please come and be the just go, like, because I used to love doing interviews with JB at Impact,
Yeah.
And like most of those just made Explosion or YouTube or whatever, like they did, they were so, because I always wanted to riff off the other person, because the way I look at it is, you want to create, you want to have things that people look forward to.
Yeah.
When they if they're going to tune in to watch your episodic program, but they can't all be these really heavy, intense sort of things like, oh, I can't wait to see what happens next in this epic saga between this person and that person, because after all, that weighs you down.
Yeah, yeah.
If every storyline is like super intense and like really heavily booked and really full of details and stuff, you just sort of go,
Yeah, give me the light fun stuff.
But if we've got 10 weeks to get to X, like some of those weeks we can just sort of add a little bit of fuel to that fire whilst being entertaining with like my little subplot with Kyle or Joe Galley or or even May Valentine. Like I said one thing about May, and like that just like took on a life of its own. Like, yeah, and for me, it's like the announcers need to be central characters.
Yeah,
they are like to me the stickmen and the announcers need to be. They are like they're like hubs at they're like sort of like a train station, sort of different things come in and out of their world, like, and so if there's a little bit of interaction there, it's a way to sort of keep it interesting for everyone, and they can put their own, because they're the voice of the audience.
Yes,
like they're sort of the they should be anyway. They're trying to sort of be the
ask the questions we want to ask.
Yes, the voice of the people. So then the audience member feel like you're, central to all this stuff going on, like, because if again, to your point, if you've got this question in mind, like, oh, well, what about that time? What about when you promised that you would do this, and then the announcer says it, you're like, yeah. So then if I start like browbeating Kyle, it feels like I'm browbeating you.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you're like, oh, shut up, So then if Kyle gets over on me, it's like, and so and on it goes. I just always recognize that the best promo guys had their own sort of unique sort of rapport with the announcers.
Yeah.
Flair with with David Crockett, or with Tony. Same with with Dusty, with Tony or Crockett, or Bob Caudle. Yeah. And then even like Rock with Michael Cole.
Oh, I was just about to say that. Some of the best ones ever with Michael Cole.
Like, anybody with Mean Gene Oakland as well.
Yeah. Hogan with Mean Gene, and Savage with Gene, stuff like that. But the thing, Rock's the best example, because he had like his own little thing with Lillian Garcia, Jonathan Coachman, Kevin Kelly, Michael Cole. you know, and I just always remember thinking like, that's brilliant, you know, because it's like, it's just something, it's something easier for people to digest, and it's just like a little thing for people to look forward to.
Yeah.
Like, instead of just sort of putting all your eggs in one basket for like, well, I hope they're interested in, you know, me and my opponent
fighting every week, back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense. And as you said, some of the best moments in wrestling history are those backstage segments.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
We've come to the end.
I have one little question. Now that my internet seems to have sorted itself out a little bit. It's fucking horrible. One quick little question. As Brits, as a fellow Brit yourself, are you a football fan? Are you still a football fan while you're over there in the US? Soccer, obviously, to our American.
Man United fan. Man United fan.
I'm so sorry. I can tell.
I'm a Liverpool fan.
I can tell from the accent this is not going to go well.
Hey, much love here, mate. Much love here.
And here's the thing: it really makes no sense why I'm a Man United fan. I have no ties to Manchester at all. It was just, you know, I was a '90s kid, and like they were the team in the '90s, you know. And I was just, you know, I know this is a little bit of an iffy thing to talk about now, but like Ryan Giggs was the man to me.
Yeah.
Like when I was a kid, you know, he was like the 17-year-old sensation, you know, and like had the curls and the, you know, and was like, you know, flying down the left wing and scoring these, you know, 25-yard screamers. I was just like, this guy's the man. I want to be like him. So, you know, I had Ryan Giggs' Secrets and Skills with Bobby Charlton on VHS.
Nice,
you know, and I would go and practice. I would go over the playing field with my little cones and the ball and practice the stuff. You know, I just sort of fell in love with the Man United's lore. And I will say this, that the reason I remained a Man United fan was because I always admired the fact that they, even in a, you know, I know that there's always seems to be more levels to this, but like I remember even in the 90s they've started having those conversations of, oh, football's getting corrupt, it's just too much money, and it's all, you know, I mean, I remember having those conversations were happening in the 90s.
Yeah,
they're going, oh, it's just ridiculous now, it's just all about money and blah blah blah. But I remember that one year when like Chelsea went from being a sort of mid-card jabroni team, and then just like next year won the Premiership. Like Roman Abramovich just comes in and is just like, I will buy best players involved, and just like
made it rain.
It's completely just like a whole different team. Pretty much, it was like they might have had like they had like there's the same goalkeeper or something. You know what I mean? It was like and it's like they changed the whole team and they've just gone out. It was like that episode of The Simpsons when Mr. Burns goes and pays all the ringers for the softball team. It was like, meets New Chelsea, and it's like, who the fuck is this? Like, it's like this is an all-star team, and like everyone just hated Chelsea. I was like, you know, and then when I would sort of argue with Chelsea fans, I would be like, look at our team, you know, our team's all homegrown guys.
Yeah.
You know, David Beckham, Nicky Butt, you know, the Neville brothers, like, you know, Scholesy, fucking Giggs, you know, I was just like, they had the best, I admired them for the fact that they, you know, Alex Ferguson's the greatest manager of all time.
Yeah. No doubt.
Like he knew how to pick talent. He knew how to groom them, how to, you know, put them together, and he, you know, built the most incredible sort of dynasty, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And he always knew who to replace. That's what I always loved about him. Always loved about him.
Yeah.
I can't relate to any of this.
You're Coventry fan. So, you know, you had one good year about 30 years ago, but we'll let him off, Nick? Yeah. We'll let him off.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Nick, for joining us today. Is there any social media or shop or anything you want to plug?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Real Nick Aldis, Instagram at Nick Aldis, and if any of you are interested in nutritional supplements, my sports nutrition company, Legacy Sports Nutrition, is available worldwide, ships to the UK at legacysups.com, and you can use code Aldis for 10% off everything. Had the reviews and the feedback have been fantastic. We launched in January, and we've shipped orders to all over Europe, Australia, you know, all across the continental United States. So it's like it's it's growing really well, and feedback has been amazing. And we just launched a women's line, which
Brilliant.
Mickey will be the face of. So yeah,
Nice.
go to legacystuff.com.
Excellent. We'll put that. We'll make sure we tweet that out as well and put it in our bio and stuff, so when everyone clicks on the video. You can follow me. It's at Fazza's Thoughts. That's FAZZAS Thoughts. And Mr. D, do you want to try and do your social media, or should I?
Yeah,
do it?
I'll give it a go. At PWCDs. I'll keep it short.
Nope, he's lost it.
Nope.
See, straight away. That was brilliant. How good
It's a
was
link
that?
tree.
I was praying.
You
I
went.
was praying for the internet. I was like, please, no. I'll keep it short.
It's at PWCDs, and you can follow us on all social media platforms. That's at It's Our House Pod.
You can find him at.
Well, thank you again so much, Nick, for joining us for today.
All right.
If you can hear me, thank you, Nick. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Take it easy, guys.